Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Imran Khan. For thousands of years, the Nile has been the backbone of civilizations and a source of conflict. The latest dispute is over the largest hydroelectric dam in Africa, being built in Ethiopia. The government says its $4 billion project on the Blue Nile, near its northern border with Sudan, will provide power to its more than 100 million citizens and create huge opportunities for the economy. Ethiopia wants to start filling the dam in July when its rainy season begins. But Sudan and Egypt downstream first want a legally binding agreement on how long it will take to fill the dam and how it will be operated. The African Union is mediating. Ethiopia's government said on Saturday the parties could finalise an agreement within 2 to 3 weeks. So let's take a closer look at the dispute. Egypt relies on the Nile for more than 90% of its water. It's facing a water shortage and fears the dam could make it worse. Sudan's caught in the middle. It can benefit from cheap electricity and controlled stream to prevent flooding. But it says if the flow isn't coordinated, its own dams will be overwhelmed. Egypt and Sudan want Ethiopia to fill the dam's reservoir slowly. And then there's disagreement on how much water Ethiopia will release during droughts and how the three countries will resolve disputes. Let's bring in our guests in Addis Ababa. Gideon Asfor, head of the technical committee of the Ethiopian negotiating team. In Washington, D.C., Max Sherkawi, political writer and researcher on Egyptian affairs. And in Khartoum, Osman El-Tom, former Sudanese Minister of Irrigation and former advisor to the Sudanese negotiating delegation. A warm welcome to you all. I'd like to start in Addis Ababa. This is a negotiation that has been going on for nearly a decade now. Ethiopia clearly wants to make this dam happen. It's very important. 100 million people can be supplied by this dam. However, it keeps faltering on technical aspects as well as political aspects. Can you just talk us through, from Ethiopia's point of view, what the sticking points are?
We believe that we have been very transparent in dealing with this issue since 2011. Our partners in Sudan and Egypt have all the essential and relevant design and study documents of the Renaissance Dam. They have been to the field numerous times, including the ministers of Egypt and Sudan. We did all this so that we can instill some transparency to what we do in the construction and design of the dam. We've shown very much of transparency that has not been in the region. So in terms of transparency, in terms of trust building, I think as a responsible member of the international community, we have done our best. Now, we have gone through different phases of negotiation. First, it was about the construction during the period of the IPOE, and then the recommendation of the IPOE had 2 studies to be done. We tried to conduct those studies, but they never materialized. Now we are in the stage of discussing the filling and operation of the Renaissance Dam. Even in that, we have agreed on the stage-based filling of the Renaissance Dam that will take 4 to 7 years of filling. And while knowing that we could have filled the dam in 2 to 3 years, given the hydrology of the Blue Nile, but for the sake of taking the consideration and the concerns of downstream countries, we have extended the filling period up to 7 years. So if it is a wet year, we'll fill it in 4 years. And if it is a dry year, we'll extend it up to 7 years. So as far as we are concerned, that we have taken into consideration almost all of the concerns of the downstream countries. And we have come so far that a few things are remaining to really conclude an agreement. And we very much understand the concerns of the downstream countries, and we hope that they do understand also, since they have built over the years many dams, they do understand also the concern of Ethiopia that it has to fill the dam in time, especially where we are now, where we have very good hydrology in the Blue Nile Basin, and the highest one dam is brimful. Even Lake Victoria is its historical maximum full level. So we shouldn't miss the opportune time where we can start filling the dam with only 10% of the mean annual flow of the Blue Nile is 4.9. So I really don't understand what the real concern of our brothers in Sudan and Egypt.
Well, let's bring in Sudan and Egypt. Let's start with Max Shirakawi in DC. Yeah. What are those concerns? What is it? I mean, according to our guest in Addis Ababa, everything is good. We've negotiated an agreement that works. So what is Egypt's concerns?
I believe Egypt's concerned that we cannot trust the Ethiopian, government, and we have other incidents they did with Kenya, with Turkana Lake, and what they did with Kenya, and what they did with Somalia before. I believe when we hear the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said Egypt have to believe us, Egypt have to believe us. No, we don't have to believe you, because you have other incidents that you was doing intentionally harming Kenya and intentionally harming Somalia. So I believe, we cannot trust just words. We trust, treaties, and we trust international laws. We reach, in Washington in January and February, almost 90% of the problems being solved. We have just two problems. We're discussing the mechanism of how to dispute settlements, and how can we manage, the operation of the dam, because we cannot trust the Ethiopian government to manage this dam by itself. So this is by the international law. We are not talking about that we want to enforce our ideas or our, opinions. No, based on 1902 treaty with the Emperor Menelik II. And by the way, in this time, Ethiopia was not under occupation. They are not colonized. The Emperor Menelik signed this treaty, without any pressure with England, and England in this time was the colonist for Egypt. And this treaty obviously gave in the third item of this treaty, they cannot do any structures on the river, the Blue Rivers, unless they have a permission from the Egyptian and the Sudanese parts. So I believe they did not recognize the treaty, and I believe your guest today was fair enough that he did not mention that they do not recognize this treaty, and did not recognize all of this, treaty. They call it as nonsense. It's not nonsense. It's international law. And also, the United Nations in 1997, in the Convention on the Law of Non-Navigational Use of International Water Crossing, in Article 7, obligation not to cause significant harm to any other country join you in this water crossing. You cannot just say it is our river, it is our water. It is not your river, it is not your water. That's a water crossing for several countries, and this is being, guided by international law. And Article 8 from the same, conventions, general obligations to cooperate, water crossing, state shall cooperate on the basis of sovereign equality.
Well, let's talk about sovereign. Let's talk about sovereign equality. We have Khartoum.
No. They don't have.
No. Let's talk about sovereign equality. We do have a guest in Khartoum, Osman El-Tom. Osman, Sudan is one of the countries that will be affected by the building of this dam. What's Sudan's position right now?
Sudan's position is that since this dam is a hydropower generation dam, it will not have a big effect on the amount of water that is going through to Sudan and then going to Egypt, because the loss is only the evaporation losses, which is about 2 billion meter cube per year, which is about 4% of the long-term average flow of the Blue Nile. This 4% can easily be accommodated because during the filling of GERD, the level of water in the Aswan High Dam, which we refer to as HAD, will be lowered a little bit. And so I expect that the evaporation losses from there will drop from 10 billion cubic meters per year to about 8 billion meter cube per year. So the loss, which is the evaporation losses in GERD, is going to be compensated by the gain that will happen in the High Aswan Dam. So generally speaking, there is not that much loss in the amount of water going through Sudan to Egypt. There are some benefits that we all know. We are all friends and we have been working together for a very long time. Atugedwin is a friend of mine and we have been working together for more than 15 years. And we are all in the same line of technical capabilities. And we know that things can go smoothly. The issue is that the two governments in Egypt and Ethiopia, they are overburdening the issue, especially the initial operation, the initial filling, which Gideon said correctly that it is only 10% of the annual flow of the Blue Nile, and it is only 7% of the total amount of water that is going to be accommodated or stored in GERD. So this issue has never been an issue, this initial filling. The talk during the last 1 or more years was on the stages after that. So for my interest and for Sudan interest, and I could say even for Egypt interest, this initial filling is not a big issue, and it can be passed. But the issue is that it should be part of the whole package.
Well, let's bring in Addis Ababa now, Gideon. Gideon, let me just come to you. Egypt says it needs a legally binding agreement, an international framework for this Renaissance Dam. Our guest in Khartoum says the problem may not be technical, it may actually be a political problem. Why doesn't Ethiopia give them a fairly standard international agreement? Other countries have done this. Why is Ethiopia seemingly not wanting to sign up?
You know, I was surprised with the statement of your guest from Washington. I mean, instead of representing his own country, now he talks about another sovereign country like Kenya and Somalia. I think they're capable of taking care of their business, both the Kenyan government and the Ethiopian government. I don't think we should trade into something which we're not responsible for. The government of Ethiopia and the government of Kenya and the government of Somalia are discussing these issues, so they'll take care that our concern now is the filling and operation of the GERD. It will be helpful to stay in that subject. Let me answer your question directly. There is a dispute resolution mechanism enunciated in the draft agreement. What we're saying is we have signed a declaration of principle in 2015 which limits the dispute resolution mechanism and takes you through a process of conciliation, mediation, and later at the final stage to the heads of state. So we're saying we have to stay within this framework, which our leaders, the three leaders of Egypt and Ethiopia have signed, and the dispute mechanism is clearly stated there. So any other dispute resolution mechanism is not appropriate. What more can we trust more than the wisdom of our three leaders to resolve any dispute arising from the filling and operation of a single dam? And we put very much trust in the leaders of the three countries, in their wisdom to resolve any dispute arising from the filling and operation of a single dam. They have resolved many issues, many political many border issues. And we have to put our trust on our leaders, not on external arbitrator. That is the whole issue. So what we are asking Egypt is to respect the Declaration of Principles signed in 2015 and respect the dispute resolution mechanism that the three heads of state have signed. This is what we are saying. I don't understand why Egypt is complicating this issue.
Well, let's go to our guest, who is an expert on Egyptian affairs, Mark Sharkawi. What we're hearing is that there is a dispute resolution mechanism already in place, that there needs to be some trust, and that's good enough. Why does Egypt want more than that?
How can we trust the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, and he's just making a statement that he will gathering 1 million Ethiopian people to start a war, and if they rocket us, we're going to bomb them. How can we trust these statements? How can we trust that we're going to fill with your permission or not your permission, whether we reach an agreement or not going to reach an agreement, we're going to fill it in July? I believe you can't trust a party talking like that. And also, military, officials in the Ethiopian army having a very, very powerful statement. They are, threatening Egypt with war, and they don't know what is the Egyptian army and what is the Egyptian army ranking number 9, internationally, and number 1 in the region, and they want to threat us. I believe they want to escalate the issue, maybe because of the elections. It was in August and postponed for 13 months. I believe now Mr. Abiy can relax a little bit because he still have 13 months to play with his people. This is not kind of resolving international issues by propaganda statements from prime ministers and from officials in the Ethiopian. I believe we cannot trust this kind of work. And also, he said that we have a mechanism, agreements for disputes, settlement being signed. I believe not. It is not signed. They refused to sign in Washington in January and February. They skipped it, and we was reaching almost 90% solved all the problem. And also, the gentleman from Sudan, he make the calculation. I was, put the numbers. If the numbers not add up, 7%. If Ethiopia wants to reduce the amount of the water go to Egypt by 37 billion cubic meters.
Mark, I have to stop you there. I do have to stop you there because
I believe we have to add up the numbers together.
Well, we have added up the numbers. The numbers are agreed upon within the agreements that Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan has had in the past. That's not under discussion right now. What is under discussion right now between the three countries is the timeline of the filling of the dam, whether it's 12 years, as Egypt wants, or whether it's 4 to 7, as
Egypt did not say 12 years. No, I'm sorry.
No, Egypt.
The last agreement in Washington, it was they filling 2 months, July and August, and if they have too much rain, they can fill in September as well. And it takes 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 16 years, 50 years, takes what it takes.
Mac, the point is, it is a very technical agreement that has been made, that could well be made, but what's making it more difficult is all of the politics surrounding this. I want to come back to our guest I want to come back to Gideon in Addis Ababa. Why is this such an emotional issue? Why can't the technical aspects that seem to be very clear just be agreed upon? Why is it such an emotional issue?
I'm sorry to say your guest in Washington is not well informed, and he's not discussing things in the subject area that we're discussing now. I don't appreciate referring to my prime minister in such a derogatory manner. We don't talk about leaders in such a manner. Please, your Washington guest should refrain from making such statements. And I do not want to go into those kinds of discussion, but he should remember that it is his own president during the time of, it was in an open television that they wanted to wage war against Ethiopia and interfere in our internal affairs. We don't want to go into that discussion. The subject at hand is the filling and operation of the guard. So I would like to remind your guest in Washington to stay within the topic of our discussion instead of.
But Gideon, I did ask you a question. Why is
else.
this such an emotional issue? Can you answer that question?
Yes, you see, your guest doesn't know the agreement. We have already agreed to fill the dam in stages. Starting this July, we'll retain 4.9. The next year, we'll retain 13.5. And we'll test our turbines during the first year, 2 turbines. And the rest of the turbines will test in the next 5 or 6 years also. So we'll be filling the dam in 7 years. That has been agreed. He doesn't know that. And what we're discussing is now how to address if drought comes, if the prolonged drought, how the 3 countries jointly will handle the drought condition. And my friend talks about other subjects, and now he takes me to issues like the 1959 agreement. He mentioned the 1902 agreement. There is nowhere in the 1902 agreement that says Ethiopia will not use the Blue Nile waters. There is nowhere in that agreement. And you see, in 1959, both Sudan and Egypt agreed to apportion 100% of the Nile waters. And all
well, we are talking about the 3 countries,
Ethiopia,
Gideon. We are running out of time, and I want to bring in my guest in Khartoum, yes. Osman El-Tom. Osman, you've heard what Egypt and Addis Abeba's positions seem to be. There is a lot of emotions there. There's a lot of technical aspects there. I just want very quickly to find out, are you hopeful that the 2 countries can come to agreement that might well be not just in their favor, but in your favor as well?
Quite confident that I'm very hopeful, and actually I could say that I am confident that they are going to reach an agreement. The technical side of the whole issue has been covered thoroughly. Maybe 90 to 95% of the issues have been resolved. What is on stake now are only 2 issues, 2 legal issues, which are related to the technical issues. One of them is the negotiation, the resolution of conflicts. And that one is, if the 3 countries sit together, there are ways and means of resolving that. Even in the Entebbe agreement, for the cooperative framework agreement between all the Nile Basin countries, there is a specific mechanism that should be followed. And that one was actually taken from the 1997 UN agreement. More than that, I think even the day before yesterday, when the heads of states have met virtually about the system, I think the issue, I think that is an expression of how the Africans can deal with their issues. Even the African Union, they have a mechanism for resolving conflicts, and that can be resolved too. So I think that matter of resolution of conflicts can easily, if the legal people and the technical people sit together, and I hope that they are going to start today at 4 o'clock. I hope they are going to solve it very quickly. There are so many examples. I don't want to take the time on that one. The other issue is the communication mechanism.
I'm sorry, Osman El-Tom in Khartoum. We are actually out of time. Now, I want to thank all of our guests, Gideon Asfor, Max Shirkawi, and Osman El-Tom. And thank you too for watching. Now, you can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join the conversation on Twitter. We are at AJ Inside Story. From me, Imran Khan, and the entire team here in Doha, bye for now. A source of life and conflict. Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan tussle over the filling of Africa's biggest hydroelectric dam on the Blue Nile. Can they find a way to bridge their differences? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Imran Khan. For thousands of years, the Nile has been the backbone of civilizations and a source of conflict. The latest dispute is over the largest hydroelectric dam in Africa, being built in Ethiopia. The government says its $4 billion project on the Blue Nile, near its northern border with Sudan, will provide power to its more than 100 million citizens and create huge opportunities for the economy. Ethiopia wants to start filling